This is Pete Lackey for your Bible Minute. Today we're going to talk about Matthew 24, which is known as the Olivet Discourse. It's a fascinating piece of prophecy where Jesus talks about immediate prophecy and then prophecy way into the future during a time known as the tribulation. And you see this interweaving of both of those time frames in this entire discourse and as he gets into other parables as well. So let's go ahead and jump in. Matthew 24. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call attention to all the buildings. Do you see all these things, he asked? Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. Friends, this was fulfilled in 70 AD with the destruction of the Second Temple, where literally Prince Titus came in, destroyed the city, and took the temple and took every stone and threw it down over the western wall. And you can see it there. There's pictures that I have here of that occurring. The reason why he threw down all those rocks and was because it was covered with gold. So they wanted to have fire, they set it on fire to melt the gold, to get the gold, and they toss the rocks over the edge. Literally in fulfillment of Jesus' exact words. And then as they make their way to the Mount of Olives, they have more questions. So let's pick up here. And as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered and said to them, See to it that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. And you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See to it that you're not frightened. For these things must take place, but that is not yet the end. So you see this immediate and then going way into the future. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And in various places there will be famines and earthquakes. But all these things are merely the beginning of the birth pang. So clearly, this isn't ending in 70 AD. He's moving forward because there's a lot that's going on. And this is the key piece. And this gospel, verse 14 says, Of the kingdom shall be preached in the entire world for a witness to all nations. And then the end shall come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which is spoken through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, and he kind of goes on. Well, let's jump into Luke chapter 21, which kind of ties into Matthew 24. Luke gives us a little bit more information here. So let's jump in. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, it recognizes that our desolation is at hand, and they will fall by the edge of the sword, and will be led captive into all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So you see a few things here, that the Jews will be chased out and spread into every nation. And friends, that happened after 70 AD. The Jewish people were spread around everywhere. And then they'll be led back. What happens is when the times of the Gentiles start getting fulfilled, when a Gentile, we know that the church, right? We look at the church as a Gentile church. Meanwhile, we're grafted in. This is the Jewish Messiah. Even me, I remember coming to Christ later in life. I'm thinking, what, Jesus was Jewish? I almost had no idea. Oh, but friends, this is happening as God starts bringing his people back, and he's not done with Israel yet. So fact one, May 14, 1948, Israel became a nation. Number two, did you know that Hebrew is the only language that was a spoken language in the world and died and then came back again as a spoken language? The few families that started Israel after World War II made sure that people were speaking Hebrew as people were coming from around the world to go back to the Jewish nation. They needed a common language to bond. So it's literally biblical Hebrew that's spoken in Israel today. Fascinating. In fact, number three, 23 Jewish believers existed that day. But today, there's over 150 Messianic congregations with over 15,000 Jewish believers in Israel. Friends, God is not done with his Jewish people. As the times of Gentiles come down, there's more and more Jewish friends coming to accept Jesus as their Messiah. So let's then tie this in, because Jesus brings up the prophet Daniel. So we're going to jump into Daniel 9 here and see some prophecies about Jesus. It's really fascinating. So Daniel, written about 530 BC. So remember, when you're going from BC to AD, you start going backwards with numbers, right? So, 400 BC is closer to AD. So you start going backwards and you start counting up. So let's take a look at what Daniel was saying, a prophecy about this destruction of the temple and the Messiah. So let's take a look. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression and to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Now, when they say weeks, it really is 77s. So there's really 7-year periods. That's what they're talking about here. So 77s, that's 490 years. So let's pick out verse 25. So you are to know and discern from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with a plaza and a moat, and even in times of distress. Then after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. The people of the Prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. So look at these points 1, 2, and 3 here. And we're going to jump into this. So first you'll notice that you'll see this breakdown on point 1 between these, oh my goodness, I lost 62 weeks and the 7 weeks. Well, in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1 and 2, King Artaxerxes had issued the second decree to rebuild Jerusalem, and it took 49 years. So that's why that's separated out, that prophecy. And if you read the book of Nehemiah, you can see that there was a lot of trouble in time building these moats and building the famous Nehemiah's wall. So literally, the whole city was rebuilt inside and out, and it was finished around 396 BC. Not only that, but the Old Testament canon was closed in 396 BC with the last prophet, which is Malachi. So then, let's jump here from the beginning. Look at this. From the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, that's Daniel 9:25, that happened in 445 BC. So pay attention. This is going to separate the men from the boys here, friends. Now, grab this next one. Until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. You see that separation? That's the 49 years it took to rebuild Jerusalem in the book of Nehemiah. So what you do is you add those together, and you got 69 weeks, or 69 sevens, which is equally to 483 years. So 483 years equals 176,295 days when you count 365 days. Well, if you do the math, right, 483 to 445, which is when the decree was issued, well, shoot, you end up at 38 AD. But wait, my friends, we're not done. Because they don't use a 365-day calendar. That's our modern calendar. They use a 360-day calendar. They had 12 30-day months. Well, if you take that, you end up with 173,880 days from the issuing of that decree until the Messiah the Prince. Well, if you do the math there, you end up with 2,415 days left, or 6.7 years. Well, you subtract that from 38, you end up between 31 AD, or really 32 AD, because 1 BC and 1 AD are the same year because there's no zero. How about that for confusing? So put that together, and let's jump to the next one. Well, we'll see here that on point 2, then after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off. Now, let me ask you something, friends. Who else but Jesus fits this messianic prophecy of sometime between 31 AD and 32 AD, and before the destruction of Jerusalem in the Second Temple in 70 AD? Because Daniel 9:26 says this, and the people of the Prince who is to come will destroy the city that was rebuilt and the sanctuary. That was Prince Titus in 70 AD. Friends, who else but Jesus fits that? But remember, didn't Daniel start with 70 weeks? Well, God's not done with his people, because that 70th week of Daniel, it's called, will be when the third temple is rebuilt, and that will enter in the Messianic age. The Jewish people see it this way. Christians, we know that that's going to happen, the 70th week in Daniel, and the Jewish people are desiring to build a third temple. There's the Temple Institute in Jerusalem that I visited. You can see right on the outside, they have the temple pieces. They trace the priestly line to 2 different families. They are getting ready for this temple. The temple is in the heart of the Jewish people. If you go to a Jewish marriage, you see them break the glass. The traditional Jews will tell you that that's to remember. At the end of that wedding ceremony, break that glass. Remember that temple being destroyed by Prince Titus. In the Passover meal, because they can't do a Passover sacrifice, you have a lamb shank that's left there and uneaten. Why? Because the temple isn't done yet. It's to remember that there is no temple. So friends, we are going to have some fun times here as the tribulation comes, as the buoys in the water start getting set for the second coming of Christ. The question is, are you ready? If you're not sure, I recommend you go to my John 3 message that I have here on the Bible Minute. Friends, this is Pete Lackey for the Bible Minute.